The next document is 12.25. 12.25, we're now dealing with laws and regulations, and it's one of the documents that I get quite a lot of questions about, this laws and regulations. What should I be doing? And what I actually did this morning, just to try and get a bit of a handle on it, to discuss it with you, is I went and I opened up ISO 250, and ISO 250 is the consideration of laws and regulations in an audit. And on the one hand, I'm actually opening this document just to remind you that RAC is not the only reference point for your audits. You do need to consider the ISOs as well. We try our best. But if you don't understand the ISOs, RAC is going to be a lot more difficult to complete. Now, in ISO 250, paragraph 13, it's telling us that the auditor shall obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the compliance with the provisions of those laws and regulations generally recognized to have a direct effect on the determination of material amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. That is what we need to consider as an auditor. ISO 250, I read through it this morning, quite an interesting document. It tells you that basically there's a limitation on the auditor. We cannot give an audit report and say that we've covered all non-compliance in our report. There's some stuff that we're just not going to be able to uncover, and we can't be held responsible for non-compliance of any laws and regulations by the client. However, it is something that we need to consider in our audit. We need to consider the impact. So what I would suggest is hold the balance sheet and income statement next to you of your client. Have a look at the director's report maybe as well, and go and identify what material balances could be affected by specific laws and regulations, and therefore are items that we need to consider for compliance in terms of our audit. So going back to the actual 12.25 document, you'll see that what it's asking, it's giving you space for a number of acts. I think there are 7 in total. What is the act that is going to have specific financial impact? Document the act. Obtain a general understanding of the applicable legal or regulatory framework. Now, if you have decided, and maybe it's something that a firm needs to put together as their approach to this document, are we going to use the VAT Act as one of the acts that we consider could have a potential material impact on the client? And if we say yes, maybe you should be putting VAT Act on every one. But then the answer to the second question is going to be the same for every single client that you do, because you need to obtain a general understanding of the applicable legal or regulatory framework. So document your understanding. Inspect correspondence with the relevant licensing or regulatory authorities. So go and have a look at the VAT returns. Go and have a look at any documentation that they've received back from SARS about the VAT, and go and document your findings here. Once again, if necessary, go and put a hyperlink in to a separate document where you've documented this. If the space isn't enough for you, don't make the cells too big. It does just become a bit irritating for yourself trying to scroll through a lot of very big cells. Obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence about compliance. Design specific audit procedures relating to the specific law and regulation. Now here, we actually need to go and do some procedures. So open up a working paper, go and document what procedures am I doing with VAT. Now that could be your VAT reconciliation, for instance. Then make sure that when you get to your revenue audit program, you've actually got a VAT reconciliation on your audit program, and then you can hyperlink this directly to that once you've performed that procedure. Consider the implications of non-compliance in relation to other aspects of the audit. So that is just a consideration process. It's not saying this is what has happened, this is what could happen. What could happen if they haven't complied with the VAT Act? Consider the implications of non-compliance, whether it has a material effect on the financial statements. So again, document information around it. Have a look, are we identifying risks? We've done a little bit of a compliance check now. We've looked at some correspondence between the client and SARS. Are we seeing non-compliance, yes or no? And are we identifying risks? Maybe we haven't seen any non-compliance, but we've realized on our documentation of this act that's applicable that, you know what, they're exposed here and we need to go and raise a risk for us to deal with later on in the audit. So is there a risk? Is it a business or a fraud risk? And what is the description of that risk that's ultimately going to carry through to my risk register? Once again, please note a lot of these cells are sitting in blue, so it will roll forward. So it is worth carrying over year on, so it is worth documenting completely. And as I say, maybe it's something as a firm you need to sit down and go and decide what are we going to document in these cells. Okay, also just some additional applicable acts that you may want to add. So you don't want to do necessarily a comprehensive review as we've done above. These are just some additional acts that you know are raising some risk factors that you want to consider, and you maybe want to do some compliance procedures. That's what the space below is for on 12.25.